We've got three. I know we've got two here, but Catherine was going to join us, but unfortunately Catherine has been called away, and she's kindly recorded a small little piece for us about big data, which is really, really important. So the question is, was the pandemic the catalyst that was needed to drive new beginnings? And if so, how do we design an engaging event for a post-pandemic audience? So in this sort of short session, we're going to try and explore the prospects of, well, I say the dark prospects possibly, of going back to what it was like in 2019. And are we, as we return back to live and we don't engage with anything we've learned in the last 2 years, but I think listening to the last panel, that is highly unlikely. Do we think it's a probability that there has been a systematic shift in attitude, especially regarding sustainability and our carbon footprint, and how do we adopt that going forward? And have we seen a different mindset in how we adapt and adopt technology into our event sector? And we also explore the global expansion of big data and how it's impacting the way we design events. Now, also, there's one thing which I want to touch on, and I will dig a little bit deeper with our panel today, and it's actually, there are some people that are quite technophobe. And I know we were listening to a panel here earlier who were all real techies, but I'm sure we have some people in the room who are not so technically orientated, and I think that's also important, that we need to include them, and there's an element of inclusion for that element of the market as well. So I'm going to, firstly, I'm going to introduce, or let the panel introduce themselves, actually. Mic test, firstly. Are we there, Elliott?
I would hope so.
I would hope so as well.
That would have been awkward if not.
It would have been very awkward. Elliott, CEO of Sparq, I'd like to introduce yourself and just tell a little bit about yourself, please.
Yeah, I'm Elliott Moores. I'm the leader of the Sparq team that are helping us out today. I've existed within the event industry and technical industry for probably about, as long as I can remember, I started at 14, installing interactive whiteboards and projectors in and around venues all over the country for my uncle, who was fortunate enough to benefit off the back of Tony Blair's £25 million initiative, which was a wonderful time for him personally. But yeah, I cut my teeth doing that. And since then, with the team that we've got at Sparq, you know, it's been interesting listening to everybody, because we've sort of, as a technical production organisation, which is at the very core of what we do, we've actually learned to take a very human approach and a very emotional approach to how we create experiences, because we think that that's actually where the true value lies. So while the whole world has been pivoting towards tech and learning for new different ways to deliver experiences from a technical perspective, we've had to repivot our thinking to make sure that we're still delivering actually really core value to people who sit on the other side of these experiences. So it's been great to listen to everybody today.
Thank you, Elliott. Thanks very much indeed. And I'm going to introduce you to Ken. Ken and I had a conversation, and it's really nice. It's come full circle, really. This is a personal thing. My business before COVID was representation. I represented privately owned hotels in the real world. So I was their UK sales director for independent hotels that came into the UK. And that fell off a cliff. Let's be honest, no one was travelling, there was no business to be had, and quite frankly, those event organisers that I was trying to sell to had no business because they were floundering and trying to keep themselves afloat, and their corporate masters had no business to give them. So it was just a dead duck of a business for me to enter. I did think that there was an opportunity for me personally to use Zoom calls to do some sort of sales representation, but when there was no product out there or no market out there, it was pointless. So I phoned Ken, and it was probably towards the end of the very first lockdown, sort of May time back in 2020, and I said, Ken, I need some advice. Can you give me? And Ken gave me some really solid advice, and 15, 18 months later, here I am representing two amazing platforms. So Ken, thank you for that personally. Ken Carter from Activate, can I pass over to you to introduce yourself?
I'm Ken Carter. I'm Client Services Director with Activate. Until quarter 2 2020, we were what you would call a full-service live events agency. We specialised in conferences, incentives, corporate events all over the world. And my particular remit in the industry is more around within the healthcare sector, having formerly been head of events for the pharmaceutical company. So my passion is around more the communication, strategy, content development, getting that message across. But going back to 2020, we had to move very quickly from being a live events agency to being a virtual events agency. We were dealing with clients that were making that demand of us at the time, and that forced us down a particular route. But back to what you were saying there, Stuart, had we not done that, we would not be here today. And virtual has become a very significant and strategic pillar of our business, and it will be going forward. There's no question of that. So we're balancing at the moment both live and virtual as live comes back, but we can certainly see a very significant long-term revenue stream for virtual going forward.
Thank you, Ken. Thanks very much indeed. And finally, Catherine King. Catherine's not here today, so I'm going to pass to a little video, and she'll tell us a little bit about herself. And why I wanted Catherine on this panel is she has crossed over from the event sector, and with one arm she's in the events industry, and the other arm she's in the data industry. And I've worked with Catherine several times over the last 15 months. And she's kind enough to have joined us virtually. I want her to bring in the concept of big data, how to handle data, and how event organisers can handle analytics to their benefit for event design going forward.
Hello, my name is Catherine King. I'm the director for the business data team at Corinium. For me, I find myself in two communities. On one hand, the event professional community, which I absolutely love being part of. The second is the data analytics community. It's where I produce most of my events and content, but also outside of work, I instruct on a University of British Columbia business school course as well. So it's absolutely in my passion area. And it was a pleasure to be invited to spend a few moments with you today talking about how these two communities will be converging. Now, they may not be converging for you right now, but I am certain they will be in the future. One of the easiest ways that I can see these two communities coming together is for our customers. And this is in a number of ways. One of the easiest areas I can pick up on straight away, which I'm hoping you will have experienced yourself, is personalization. So many brands, especially in the tech industry, have such a personal relationship with us. It's like they know us. I'm sure we've all felt that through social media platforms where they really understand what to put in front of us and that relationship they have with us. We're seeing this more in the financial services, we're seeing this more in healthcare, that personalization is becoming a non-negotiable for us all. And unfortunately, that means we need to get our data right in order to deliver that. We really need that 360-degree view of our customers, how they've interacted with us before, what has been their buying and purchasing trends with us. Have they had a great time at our events? Have they not had such a great experience? Have they been more likely to participate virtually or in person? What has been their interaction with us? Being able to answer all of these questions is so crucial. The days of mass marketing are numbered. It's really down to that personal touch points. And this can be in many forms. Segmenting your data, for example. If you know this person attends every single virtual event, but has expressed interest in not so much attending our in-person events, then of course, your marketing is going to be pushed one way rather than the other. This also goes for your team members as well, reaching out for different offers, whether it's your clients or your customers. If you have a really great relationship with one person, that's amazing. We love it when you have a human interaction with our organization, and I'm sure you're all the same. But what happens if that person's on holiday or goes off sick or for whatever reason can't be there at that moment? That's where understanding the data, understanding that relationship that we have with that customer or client needs to be within the data as well. Now, there's lots of wonderful technology and processes which are being developed to help us with this, and I'm sure we'll get into that discussion at some point in this event, or certainly we will in the future. But it's certainly very interesting to me to see how the two worlds are going to be colliding very soon. I do hope you're enjoying the event. I'm so sorry I couldn't be with you, and I look forward to hearing your thoughts on this.
Thank you, Catherine, for that insight. She's really a wonder when it comes to big data, to be perfectly honest, and a real expert, so great to have her involved. It raises a number of points. I don't really know who wants to start off, because off really about the importance of personalisation. And do we see actually any event organisers using personalisation at the moment? Is it important to them, or are people missing that opportunity? I don't know who wants to kind of...
I'm quite happy to pick that one up to start with.
Thank you.
I think there's two things. Personalisation is important to everybody. The question is, do event organisers and event planners have the time to get into the depth of detail that's needed to really personalise an experience? And that all comes down to, I think somebody mentioned it earlier, about how are we measuring and how are we really pivoting our focus onto the people that are attending the event, rather than just building an event that in our mind we tell ourselves is functional. It's got breakout rooms, it's got this, people have got the ability to do all these things, when in actual fact, you have no idea whether that's actually what people want, unless you go and ask them. So going through that process of building personas for your delegates and for your attendees is a really important part of that creative process. You've got to try and to truly build an experience is to have somebody have an emotional takeaway. That's the aim of any event, live, virtual, whatever. Somebody has to have an emotional takeaway. And the only way you're going to give them that is if you know what they want. I go back to, this is a human thing that we're trying to achieve. All that's changed is the mechanism online versus in versus
Let me
in
dig
person.
deeper in that case, because we're all thin on the ground here. Event organisers are thin on the ground. Do you think an event organiser in that case has the capacity to do that effectively, or is this a utopia we're trying to kind of achieve, which is not really ever going to be achievable?
I think it will be achievable. I think we're in a very unique period within the industry right now where there is a mass requirement to communicate over and above anything we've ever seen before, right? And that's what's driving the very functional thinking. It's how can we deliver experiences that meet a standard of quality, personalisation and effectiveness at a frequency that the market and the delegates demand. So everything is, the frequency is so much sped up now in terms of how often we have to communicate with how big an audience. So I think the time to really focus and build personalised experiences is lost because it's about mass communication. So therefore the conversations pivot to ones that are very functional. How many people are on the other end? How are people going to access that information? How do we get our messages to as many people as we possibly can, as efficiently as we possibly can? And I think as the industry starts to return to normal, and people have a sort of a more well-rounded events program that's more strategic and more thought out, I think that people will then have the time. But at this moment in time, I don't think that's the case.
So in that case, again, I'm pushing for harder in that case. With an old-fashioned event, a one-off hit event, a live event, if you want, where the data is captured by Johnny, the event manager, and quite frankly, he's headhunted by another agency and that data is lost very, very quickly. And certainly it's not there the next year. Do you think that the analytics that virtual will bring can be kept online, even if it's not actually used at the moment, but to build a picture of the ideal delegate and their ideal delegate journey going forward?
I would certainly hope so. I'd hate to think that anybody's data is lost, Stuart. That sounds like a horrific thing to happen. I hope there's no GDPR police in the building because that would be terrible. But exactly that. I think there's you have to try and build a picture of who your audience are. It's the number one thing, right? And I think in the last 12 months we have, and it's nobody's fault, it's just the chaos that we've lived in for the last 2 years. It's been desperation. We've built events and methods of communication out of desperation because the freedoms of being able to speak to one another and mass communicate our messages have been removed from our lives. So I think, I think it will change. I do genuinely think it will change, but I think first and foremost you've got to have the buy-in of the delegates that they're happy for that data to be used and kept. And also you've got to be very conscious of what information you want to get out of it, right? What data do you want to hold and why do you want to hold that data? Because it's got to be data that drives future decisions, okay? Because you have an obligation to give the attendee, the delegate, the reason why you're gathering that data to reuse and hold for a later purpose.
And to improve that.
Yeah, exactly that.
Ken, your thoughts?
Yeah, you were asking about the role of the events agency, and even in a live event situation, one of the questions I go through with our client are, why are you having this event in the first place? what do you want the delegates to get out of it? What do you want them to know and think and do after they've participated in it? And I don't think that changes even whether you're live or whether you're virtual. And it's interesting, Catherine's point about personalization. I think when you're organising a large event, whether in live or in person, in a virtual setting, there's only a certain degree you can go to in terms of personalising the content of that event. But bearing in mind, a lot of the events that we organise tend to be the more corporate events, so they're either internal or customer-facing events driven by a large corporate. You need to understand, to a certain extent, the ways in which people assimilate information. There are those that want lots of data and lots of detail. There are those that just want the top line. There are those that want it very visual. There are those that want to get really into it and want to be more collaborative and round table and discuss with others and share ideas. And somehow in that huge, great mix, you've got to try and create an event experience that somehow meets all of that. It's impossible. So to a certain extent, with all of this going forward, you're always going to be playing to the majority to a degree. But yes, I think personalization of content and use of data and helping us drive that content is something that we've all got a role in terms of helping our clients to understand how and when to use it.
Because that data can actually help before the event itself. It's not only during the event or post-event. You need to pre-engage with clients when you're organising an event. And I'm guessing if you've got the right data, you can tailor your it's as basic as tailoring your invite. You can tailor the invite to what element of content they come to. So I guess in the end that is going to help with your overall results and your return on investment. But I do think it's important that it needs to be personally in terms of it needs to be engaged with beforehand, before the event itself. With regard to event design, we're not skilled at everything. We don't have all of the tools to our advantage, and I know that you, Elliott, will have used outsourced resources because you have to, because your business is growing at a rapid pace. In fact, all the agencies that are trying to get as many outsourced resources of those freelancers that have become independent. But what do you think the role of collaboration is in terms of bringing on experts to collaborate with you? Is how it's going to shape event design going forward? Do you think it's an important? Do you think collaboration will continue going forward, or do you think we'll consolidate?
I think collaboration will continue. I think because what's happened to typical production organisations is, when the pandemic hit, Ken and I were talking at the break. Our challenge when the pandemic hit was very different to some other production organisations, because for us, our challenge was we already had a small digital offering where we were building virtual environments, and we had been for probably 4 or 5 years prior to the pandemic. Our challenge was what was 10 to 15% of our business overnight became 100% of our business. So our challenge was scalability. How do we take an infrastructure that was there to deliver this much and now make it secure enough, capable enough and robust enough to deliver absolutely every single experience that we do as a company? So to do that, we were totally reliant on collaboration. We brought in cybersecurity experts to work with us on our infrastructure to make sure that it was secure, first and foremost, secure enough to scale. Because, again, clients with us that had historically, worked in the financial services sector, for example, came to us, and there was a lot less of a security requirement for in-person events. But actually, obviously, when you take that sort of data online and those sorts of communications online, the security element of that content is huge. So we needed to bring in experts to make sure that if we were going to be liable and take ownership of that on behalf of our clients, to make sure that was safe and secure, that we could do that well enough. So we had to bring in IT infrastructure specialists around AWS and to help us on that journey. On the back of that, again, our requirement to pump out content was quadrupled overnight. So we worked with local education establishments on apprenticeships and things like that to give people who were interested in the events sector or who would come from a gamification background to come and work with us to build some of these rendered environments. So some came on scholarship, some came on part-time sessions, and others have joined us full-time. Because we also didn't want this opportunity to pass us by where we could give those guys some really unique insight and experience in the industry. And we also worked with some sort of larger artwork houses to help us on some of the bigger and more complex projects. So we wouldn't have survived the pandemic had we not have been in collaboration with other partners, because the pivot and shift was smaller for us. Again, ours was around scalability, but for a lot of production organizations, you know, that even today are unfortunately not with us, it's because they couldn't pivot quick enough. So the only reason, like I said, that we managed to do that was because of collaboration and partnerships.
And that leads nicely on to Ken, because I know you pivoted very, very quickly, and I'm sure collaboration came in.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, we had our previous experience pre-COVID was delivering a couple of hybrid events where we were working in Europe and bringing in speakers and/or audience from the US. So actually, we knew nothing, about hybrid or virtual events in the big scheme of things. But we were fortunate where we were working with a global healthcare client. We were in the process of organizing a global project. It was a training project, and that project had to go ahead, and we were forced down a virtual route. Now, we didn't have that technology in-house, so we found a virtual partner who did. But then the creative demands of that project went beyond just we want an interface through which we can broadcast this event to actually, we need to make this more engaging, we need to make it more creative. So actually then we're starting to bring in, as you say, designers, graphic designers to create this whole 3D immersive environment. And then it becomes, well, actually, how can you then navigate around that environment, and how can you actually build gamification into that environment? And the whole thing needed a huge amount of collaboration. And we went from a period of probably standing start in, let's say, end of May 2020 to our first big global live event going live beginning of October to an audience of about 300 or so people across Europe with a fully immersive 3D environment. So our learning curve was massive, but we'd never have achieved that without collaboration.
And that collaboration is still on that front. Obviously, a lot of businesses closed or reduced their amounts of events. By the sounds of it, that particular event is increased its presence as a product. Can you give us some statistics on how that improved that particular client's
well,
business?
if I give you an example, so I was running the numbers on our performance from last year. So, so we would typically, as a live events business, we would do maybe 70, 80 live events a year around the world. Last year we did 145 virtual events with nearly 19,000 attendees from 91 countries. So that's the difference. But equally, in terms of business, we had live event clients who went from, let's say, £1 million turnover a year down to almost nothing. We had another particularly large client who was doing a few 100,000 a year went to well over 1 million. And all of that's virtual. Because even clients were grasping this in very different ways. Some were saying, no, we don't want to get involved in this, there's no need. Others were tinkering with it to a degree. But others suddenly realized there was huge opportunity here for this sort of technology, either in terms of them being able to continue to do business in a different way, do business in a way that actually enabled them to save money, i.e. we're not ferrying huge numbers of people across the country or across the globe. And that's why I think this sort of technology will remain with us for quite some time.
Stas, before I bring you in, I'm just going to push a bit deeper on that one. Regarding sustainability, is it a buzzword that is genuine, or is this just a flash in the pan?
No, it's genuine, at least for the clients that we're dealing with. There are, I would say, like anything else, there's a spectrum. There are those for whom it is not really a big thing yet, but there are those for whom it's a major thing. And we have clients who are B Corps, so it's a big thing for them, and everything we do, whether it's live or virtual, has a very strong sustainability theme attached to it.
And I have to say, I am a cynic. I remember the same thing, CSR 2008, when we hit the financial crash in 2008. I have a feeling we are going to hit some sort of financial crash given what's going on at the moment. And do you think they'll drop it, or do you think it will be driven by the younger generation that is really wants to sustain and wants to keep our planet in some sort of shape or form, if it's not destroyed elsewhere, but generally, if it's going to be continued?
I think it will be it's all dependent on the drivers of the end client, right? And actually, you know, I hate to say the word, it's totally dependent on their moral compass, right? And you know, as a corporation, what's important to them? You know, if ultimately the bottom line is their primary purpose and driver, you know, if they're registered on a stock exchange and stock price is critically important, then what they want to do is maintain profitability to be able to present that stability to the shareholders and investors. And so actually that then becomes a key driver. So I think, you know, going back to that spectrum that you talked about is everybody, I like to hope everybody wants to do the right thing by our planet. But what will happen, and what has happened, is if we get into a position as an economy where we're in a position where we have to make a decision around what's best for our planet and what's best for our business and our people, is I think we'll start to see some of those moral compasses shift.
Totally agree with that. I'm conscious of time. I'd like to hold that thought, which we might pick up on some of the roundtable discussions at a later stage. Stas, I can see you looking for questions. Your hand is almost pitching in the air. I can see it. Have we got a sound with Stas? Stas, we can't hear you. You're on mute, Stas. I just wanted to say that.
That's the quote of the 2022, and I just brought it again, so it's going to become viral. Sorry. I want to thank, before we have Yoav with us, he will join in a second. I want to thank Elliott and Ken for joining our event. They have so many valuable information and impactful points. And again, I want to especially thank Sparq, because I'm enjoying this live stream virtually and seeing it in a best quality as possible. I just want to mention to our virtual attendees who are listening to us now that Sparq has a virtual booth in our platform, and you can visit them, and it's definitely worth to do business with them. They're an amazing people. They're about people first, and for me, it's very important. As we are a company, we're all about people first, and I think we share it with Sparq together. Thank you, Elliott, for supporting us. Yoav, can you unmute yourself and come with the camera and ask your question? Thank you, Yoav.
Hi. First of all, I'm so sorry, but I have some problem with my camera, so I'll remain black. Actually, I have a question regarding COVID. Can we say that we are, at least in a business matter, over with the COVID, or do we expect that we need to prepare for future variants? And if so, how would you suggest that?
Thank you, Yoav. It's a very interesting question. So I'll just repeat it in case you weren't heard. COVID is coming and going, and people switching strategies from now and then, you know, planning last minute. Do we need to take a long-term plan? That's, I think, that was the question. Do we need to take a long-term plan in preparing for facing, you know, some variants or other diseases that can paralyze the event industry, paralyze the business of the events industry? Do you have any suggestion to Yoav and to our virtual audience?
I have to say, I'd love to answer this one, because I get this one all the time. I think you need to have a virtual event strategy or a virtual event solution as part of your overall event strategy. I don't think it needs to play a major part. It may be 20% of your business, but I do think you need to have a virtual event solution which needs to be built in and managed and planned into your overall event strategy, which you can call upon as and when needed. I think it's essential. That's my personal short answer.
I'd agree completely.
Yeah, I mean, I was looking for the health secretary to answer that question at that point. You know, I thought, I don't want to be the guy that sits here and says COVID's over, but yeah, I think I would agree with you. Yeah, for sure. I think it would be short-sighted, I think, but also not beneficial to plan for a life without any remote participants, because there are a huge amount of benefits. I think we think that because COVID's driven this change, it actually hasn't. What it's done, you know, everyone said it's accelerated that change, but your ability to drive audience engagement and audience numbers has never been greater. Your ability to be creative and break the mold of what is physically possible within a virtual environment is phenomenal. So in terms of creating really special experiences and environments, there is literally nothing that is off the table. So I don't necessarily like the narrative that we're forced into virtual events. Actually, there is a time, a place, and an application for having virtual events, but the point and hybrid events, but the point is it's all about application. It's all about the right time, the right audience to get the right outcomes from that experience. I don't think it needs to be anybody's default.
And I think just to add to that, you know, from a live events perspective, and appreciate the main topic of discussion today is virtual, but from a live events perspective, I think there's been a huge amount of learning right across the global industry. And even as we moved into the second half of last year and live was coming back quite well here in the UK, and we were even doing some international projects, that learning, I think, will inform the way clients and agencies and venues and DMCs and other partners can actually work together in terms of planning live events, but with a degree of safety in it, in order to make sure that A, they go ahead safely, but also if there is a need to suddenly end that event, that it's done in a sane and sensible way with an appropriate financial transaction, making sure everybody covers their costs. But then equally, as your point, there is the backup of actually we can still deliver this in a virtual capacity even if we can't get everybody together physically.
Totally agree. Does that answer your question, sir?
Yes, it does. He already dropped out, and we have the next question coming from Natasha, and that's amazing. She's joining us from the car. So that's what's beautiful about virtual events. People can join from anywhere, anytime. Natasha, please go on.
Hi, nice to hear you. Can you share some practical tips on planning events strategy in the years 22-23?
Thank you, Natasha. Thank you. Drive safe. That's the most important thing. Drive safe. Thank you.
I'm not the driver.
Oh, that's good.
My partner is the driver, so it's safe.
That's amazing. That's amazing. Thank you. And it's, again, brilliant to see people joining virtually from anywhere, doing anything. That's one of the best things about technology. It allows you the freedom to be remotely available online, but still nothing can replace in person. I must say, each time I say something like that, I say nothing can replace in person. Thank you, Natasha. You can turn off the camera and listen to the answer. Thank you.
Gentlemen, anyone wants to go first?
Sorry, I understand the question.
It was just what elements are going to help design the. I missed the question as well. What a perfect answer I am. Thank you.
I repeat the question. The question was, what are strategies, tips you can give for planning an event? Is it hybrid or virtual in 22 and 23? Sorry, I'm too much excited. So what tips you can give about hybrid planning and virtual planning in the next 2 years?
I think fundamentally, it goes back to what I was saying earlier, it doesn't matter whether it's a live event or a hybrid event or a virtual event. Be clear. I think she's having another conversation. Be clear about the purpose of it. What's the purpose of having the event in the first place? We did have some clients who were kind of jumping on board thinking, we've got to do something because everybody else is getting on board with virtual events. But what's the purpose? What's your why? What are you trying to get out of it? What do you want people to know, think, and do? I think those basic principles always remain. And thereafter, you start to get into some of the more of the fine detail of, okay, well, which audience do we bring in? Is this an internal audience, an external audience? What is the nature of the program? What's the duration of the program? And beginning to plan it in a step-by-step process. We talked about this earlier. Content is king. Whether that be the actual content that's being driven out through the event, or whether it's the what is actually hosted and visualized on the platform. So how are you going to bring all of that together? And the last thing is allow plenty of time. I know Arnold said you can put these environments together in a matter of weeks. Our experience with corporates that are a bit more slow moving is it might actually take 8, 10, even 12 weeks to actually get the whole thing together as a complete package.
And
so
Elliott,
allow yourselves plenty of time.
Thank you, Ken. And Elliott, I'm going to hit you with just three words, please. Short on time.
Show empathy to your users and your delegates and your attendees with regards to their needs. Focus on emotional takeaways, because typically tech-led or virtual events are quite boring if you sat through a Teams call all day and you struggle to get that level of engagement. And go beyond the platform. So if you've got remote attendees, remote delegates, it doesn't mean that they can't have a proportion of an in-person experience. You know, we've done events with clients where we've sent gift boxes to their home and things like that. So give them the same takeaways that you would get within your goodie bag from your, you know, your live experience. You have to find a way to have those people feel involved, or they will become disengaged.
Thank you very much indeed. Stas, have we got anyone else online? I am conscious of time here.
Last question that I was asked in private to ask, and that's really nice question because it's about our platform, so thank you for that. The question, maybe I'll answer it and I'll be very fast, promise. Can you list some of the most significant technological breakthroughs in event tech over the last 2 years? And do you believe the virtual event will move to more advanced metaverse? Oh, I see that Simon has joined to ask the question. Simon, I've just asked your question because we weren't receiving you as attendee. Simon, can you repeat the question?
Yes, of course. Can you list some of the most significant technological breakthroughs in event tech over the last 2 years? And do you believe the virtual event will move into Metaverse?
Thank you, Simon. You can mute yourself and listen to the answer. And I want to answer this question if possible, and then we can wrap it up. So I think the most advanced technological breakthroughs was that the virtual platforms that were always a sidekick before the COVID, like there were a second option. People never treated the event tech really seriously before COVID. So the great thing that happened that we came, for a short period, we became the only solution. Now we are a centerpiece of most of the events because people really saw a great value in having virtual elements in their events or running just virtual events. People can bring more attendees, people can bring more leads for their companies, people can bring more business and connect with many people only in a virtual space. And about the Metaverse, I don't want to sell our platform, but we've been Metaverse since day one. That's what our vision, even before Zuckerberg announced into the world that his vision of Metaverse. And I think the event industry will have room enough both for non-visual platforms like Swapcard, Hopin, Intelligo, or friends from Intelligo. And it always have a place for non-visual platforms, and it will have a more increased usage for graphical platforms like ours that produce an immersive experience. I think over the next years, the 3D technology will improve even more. The equipment and the hardware will improve more, and then we'll see a much more increased use of Metaverse. But Metaverse can be practical even today. And I hope, Simon, that answers the question.
Yes, it is. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Simon. Stuart, I'm giving you back the stage.
Thank you very much indeed.
Let me know when you want me to say goodbye.
Well, I think actually that is a really good time, actually, Stas. I'm going to wrap this session up here, and I know that we're now going to go into an in-house closed session for privacy purposes, to dig deeper into what we want to discuss. But I know you probably want to sign off, and you're going to join the virtual team to do exactly the same in that respect. So I'm going to let you say goodbye.
Thank you, Stuart. I was so much excited in there. I'm so glad that so many of you come to our event. I appreciate each of you personally and separately and together. So thank you for attending our event. Thank you for joining virtually, joining in person. We will now, like Stuart said, we'll split into 2 groups. You'll continue your in-person part of the event. We will have a roundtable discussion and one-on-one video networking on the platform. So I encourage every virtual attendee that now watching my speech to send me a message and start a video meeting with me. I'm free and available. And again, I want to thank our sponsors, the Renaissance Center, Pancras Renaissance Hotel, London and Partners. I want to thank Sparq. They're amazing again. I'm not biased at all. They're truly amazing. And I want to thank Instantly, our tech integrations. And I want to thank you all the previous sponsors that supported our event on January. They've done so much great work with us, and we are looking to have, the A2Z community is not just an event today. It's not just an event that was in January. We are building a community, so feel free to be in touch with us through the year. We'll have so many different sessions, so many great speakers joining us through the year. So I hope to see you be on touch. So I'm not saying goodbye, I'm saying till next time. Thank you, guys.
Cheers, Stas. Thanks very much indeed. Thank you. Thank you, gentlemen. Thanks very much indeed. Thank you.